Hi everyone, it's Henry here, and it's time for another video in our Army Painting Horus Heresy series. And for this one, we're going to focus on the 12th Legion, the World Eaters. They've got a fantastically striking scheme with predominantly the white with the blue accents. And of course, being the World Eaters, we can go to town on things like battle damage, blood effects, gore, all that sort of thing. Now the aim, as ever, is to create some brilliant looking miniatures within a realistic time frame, which means we can get some big armies on the table playing some fantastic looking games. So let's get painting. Quick bit of pre-assembly. I've blue tacked on the shoulder pads and the backpack because we're going to be painting those a different colour. So most of the armour is going to be white, but we're going to do blue on the shoulder pads and blue on the backpack. Blue tacked together so we can do all of the priming and the pre-shading, everything as one, and we can take the pieces off as and when we need to. First up, we're going to apply a dark grey. In this case, I'm using a Tamiya IJN grey. I've thinned this about 3 or 4 drops of thinner, Tamiya X20A thinner, to the paint. And I'm going to work my way around the model. I don't just want to give it a completely solid coat of this grey. We do want to build up a little bit of a gradient by applying the thin layers over the black primer. But the reason we're using this grey is we're going to choose to paint this white without any sort of pre-shade, so the pre-shade, if you will be the finish. And sometimes when we do that just using white over black, we can get quite a harsh colour in the shadows, and we don't want that when we're doing this white scheme. So by using a dark grey like this, building it up in thin layers, we're already creating a nice range of greys to apply our white over the top of. And then the main armour colour is going to be Tamiya flat white. So I've thinned this the same, maybe a touch more actually, and now I'm going to build this up just like we would on a pre-shade, where I'm focusing in on key areas, all coming from one light source. So in this case, the light source from the front is the top right as we look at it. So everything facing that light source is going to be that little bit brighter. And then on the back of the miniature, we'll do the same, top right. So we take our time building up these thin layers of paint over the top of the grey. And you can see we're already getting a really nice sort of shift of colours from that grey in the shadows through to that bright white on the highlight. Now I'm just checking round it to see if it's the sort of lights are all matching up, so it's all making sense across the model. Is everything light from the one direction, dark from the one direction? Just checking it makes sense. And if there's any areas on there that I feel need a bit of a boost, because as I say, this is our final finish. It's going to be quite difficult to go back and change this armour once we start doing the other things on it. So I'm just making sure those areas like top of the head, top of the backpack, that sort of thing are really nice and bright, because we're only going to dull them down with all the stages that we follow on with anyway. So there's no harm in going a little bit extreme at this stage. And with a Space Marine, I mean, the armour's 90% of him, isn't it? So as long as we get this step right, we're doing pretty well. Now for the blue parts of the model, we've already got a lovely pre-shade on there, which is kind of handy. And I'm going to use a contrast paint here. It's going to be called Ultramarines Blue Contrast Paint. Don't worry about the name, we won't tell anyone. This colour, I think, is a brilliant match for some of the colour plates that we see in the Forge World Black books. And the nice thing is, this is going to be one colour over the pre-shade. We're not worrying about any other paints. So we've managed to achieve our armour colour in 3 paints, a grey, a white and a blue. You see them on the model all together. Really, really happy with this. Contrast paints is one of my first go-tos now for a nice strong colour through the airbrush. I was really pleased with the colour that this Ultramarines Blue came out. Now I'm going to prep the model for the next stages with a couple of layers of gloss varnish. I've used Vallejo polyurethane gloss varnish, thinned 3 or 4 drops of thinner, just normal airbrush thinner to varnish. Now the first thing we'll do is make up an oil wash. For this I'm going to use a colour called Payne's Grey. I use Winsor Newton Artist Oil colour for this, and I'm thinning it down with mineral spirits. Again, Winsor Newton, and this is their odourless artist thinners called Sansador. And just mix that paint into the solvent to create a wash. then we work our way all around the miniature to bring definition to all those panels. We've done a video dedicated to pin washing or panel lining, whatever we want to call it, and I'll put the link up in the top corner. But you can see as we touch that wash mix to the model, the fact that it's that solvent base going on a glossy surface means capillary action's just sucking it into all those recesses. I think it's one of my favourite steps of painting this. So you can see once it's dry, I've also applied the decals at the same time, and then I've left it overnight to dry. We've done a video about applying decals as well. You can already see that definition it's brought to the armour. Now some people may choose to leave it at this stage, that's absolutely fine, but we will battle damage this up. And for a final armour finish, I've chosen Ammo by MIG Ultra Matte Varnish. Completely your choice, you might like it glossy, you might like it satin, you might like a matte finish. I quite like it ultra matte. And here all I've done is blacked out with Vallejo Model Colour Black all the other areas of the model that I'm going to paint. It just helps create a bit of definition and gives me a plan with what I'm going to do. One quick highlight on all the black parts of the model, I'm going to use a dark grey, in this case Vallejo Model Colour Dark Grey. It's a nice thick paint, it's very easy to apply. It gives us a nice highlight on things like the straps and the bolter, anything like that I want to be black. Now I'm going to do a little bit of battle damage on the armour. Any colour's going to show up well over the white. I'm going to choose to use a brown here that I like to use on most of the models, and it's in this case it's GW Rhinox Hide. Just get a little bit of sponge, tear it up so we get an uneven surface, dip it in the paint, touch off the excess, and then very gently just start pressing it against those areas of the model that we think are going to receive the most damage. So I always feel particularly lower down on the model, and probably more towards the front. And then in the case of a Marine, things like shoulder pads I imagine as well. You can choose to weather your guys and battle damage your guys up as heavily as you want. I'm just going to do a little bit for this video so you can see the effect. And if I want to increase any of those areas of damage, I'm just going with my brush. So I'm still using the same brown paint, Rhinox Hide. Thinned it a tiny bit down on my palette, but I don't want it too thin. I want the paint to stay where I put it when I apply it. Just working my way around a few of those particularly prominent edges or areas that will get the most wear and tear. You can just see in the top of the shot there as well, the decal looking a little bit funny. I was a bit impatient with applying it. I'm going to cover that in a future video of how you can fix those issues. Now for the silvers areas of the model, I'm just going to base coat it in a dark silver. In this case I'm using Games Workshop Iron Warriors. Any dark silver will do. I've chosen to give this guy a black bolt gun. Recently I've been doing the whole bolter in the silver, but I thought the white would just benefit from that sort of black almost being the third colour on there. And for the trim, I'm going to base coat this in a metallic brown colour. So I've chosen Decayed Metal by scale 75, but you could use something like, oh gosh, what's it called? Warp Lot Bronze by Games Workshop. Or just mix a little brown paint into a dark silver, that would work too. And then for the highlight, I'm using Games Workshop Runelord Brass. Now they recently reformulated this paint. I liked the old one, to be fair, but the new one, it definitely mixes a lot easier, and I think it's a touch brighter as well. I'm just applying a couple of little highlights on the trim with this. Now we want to weather him up a bit further. So I'm going to take a brown oil paint, in this case Burnt Umber by Winsor Newton again, and I'm thinning it down again with the odourless mineral spirits. And this we're going to use to simulate sort of dirt and grime on the model. And I always leave, when I'm doing this stage, I leave a little bit of that blob of oil paint sort of neat sat there in the mineral spirits, just so I can come back to that and use that to create a few little streaks on the model. So just like we did before, going to work our way around. Now, although the model's not gloss, in fact it's matte in this case, the fact that we've got a smooth finish to it and we have the spirit base to the paint means we're still going to get that capillary action. So it's still going to predominantly colour the recesses rather than the surfaces of the model. The only difference here is I'm not going to go around every single panel. Again, I'm more sort of focusing on the areas I did when I was doing the chipping. And I'll also look at the areas of metal on the model, so the silver on the bolter and that sort of thing, the bronze trim. And I'll just give those a nice heavy wash with the brown. And I'll do the same to the black areas as well. I really like washing sort of the black piping and stuff with a brown oil. I think it gives you a really cool effect. As I say, I will use some of that neat oil paint to draw a few streaks down. Probably hide some of that shoddy decal work that I did on the shoulders. It's pretty simple. I just didn't leave the products on long enough and I didn't smooth it out well enough. Bit frustrating when you come back to it like that and they sort of frost up a little. As I say, I might look at doing a video on sort of fixing issues like that in the future. Then a few final effects. Just going to do a little bit of chipping using a slightly brighter silver. In this case I've used GW Leadbelcher. So I'll highlight the silvers on the model and I'll also just do a few little scratches with the silver, generally in areas that I've already put a bit of damage. This is to simulate sort of really fresh scratches that have occurred on the model. Well, on the Marine. You can see the difference that brown wash has made on him as well. Now with World Eaters, be a bit remiss if we don't do a few blood effects. Blood for the Blood God, very good paint by Games Workshop, lots of people enjoy using it. I tend to use a mix of Tamiya Clear Red and Tamiya Smoke. I've just used that for years, so I still do. Just mix them together, thin them down with water, and you can see I'm loading my brush up and then just flicking my brush against, in this case just a cut off Q-tip, but something like a cocktail stick would be probably a bit better. Just flick a little bit on. You notice I tested it on the back of the model first, so I didn't ruin the paint job. The trick with this is just to be brave. Just get it on there and enjoy it. Be confident with where you're going to place it. You can see we're just a little bit on the leg there, just working its way up the body. Now here he is finished with the base just done simply. I'll pop down the pigments that I used on the base. As I said earlier, it's a very, very striking scheme and it comes together quite quickly. When we're using light colours like white, you're always going to get much more impact from things like your battle damage, your weathering, your blood effects, stuff like that. So it really is up to you how far you take it. But no doubt, whenever I go to 30k events, it's often, World Eaters armies that will stand out on the table. I think they're just brilliant. Masses of infantry, all heavily weathered and battle damage. I just think they look awesome. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you've got any questions about what I've done, please pop them in the comments and I'll do my best to get back to you. If you want to check out any of the other Horus Heresy army painting recipe videos we've got, there's a playlist with them all in. So hit that like button, subscribe if you're not already. It really helps us out. And I'll see you next time.